Welcome into the NFL Opening Line Report Super Bowl edition. I am Drew Martin, joined as always by Teddy Covers, getting you ready for the Super Bowl. We'll go over the line, side and total here, guys, projecting where we are going. Also a preview of the game, but without further ado, Teddy Covers, happy Monday morning to you, buddy. Welcome on in.
Yeah, great to be here, Drew. Always fun on a Super Bowl Monday after the games get announced yesterday. Certainly plenty to unpack from what we saw against Philly knocking off Washington and what we saw for Kansas City Kansas City and the refs knocking off Buffalo. Let's call it how it is. So there's plenty of stuff to break down there. We could talk about what the look-ahead numbers were. We can talk about where the early money is flowing, both side and total. And I've got some props that are already out that I wanted to mention. And, of course, we'll talk about the last time these two teams met in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. We can talk about how Tom Brady was as bad as a color commentator as I've really ever heard in yesterday's game. Brady was pretty awful. When his is the only game on, that was rough, obviously. And I do want to talk about some of the props. The first numbers have come up on some of the stuff, and we expect some movement. We'll talk about MVPs, Jalen Hurts numbers, Kareem Hunt's numbers, Xavier Worthy, all of which are worth noting here on a Monday morning. And if we have time, Drew, at the end of the show, we'll go through a little trip through memory lane when it comes to Super Bowls. This week, we'll talk more about side and total. Next week, we'll recap side and total and talk a little bit more about the props, obviously. We'll have a loaded prop sheet Thursday night at the Westgate Superbook. I'll be down there, as will many of my friends. There's something about that Thursday night when the props come up at the Westgate Superbook that attracts all the wise guys in Nevada, and many of them from out of Nevada. It's a hell of a place to be. And I'll be there Thursday night, so I'll report back everything that I see and hear. Well, everything on the record that I see and hear on next week's show. But for today, let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about the big games, where the numbers open, and where they're likely to move.
Absolutely, Teddy. Setting that up here, guys. And I think we will have time to go over a few of the past Super Bowls here. History doesn't always repeat, but it usually rhymes, so we can use that in our handicapping. But let's set it up here. Tee it up. Super Bowl 59, Sunday, February 9th. Caesars Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana. So we are heading to the Big Easy here. Keep in mind, guys, fast track, controlled climate where the New Orleans Saints play their home games. And Teddy, we're talking Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. We saw this total open, 48.5, -1 and a hook, that being the Chiefs as the favorite. We were seeing mostly -1.5 now. There is a -2 out there. And a little tick up here by a full point, 49.5 seems to be the consensus total. So it'll throw it over to you. Kind of opening thoughts on the opening number and where you think this is moving.
All right. So, my take on the total is very different from yours for what it's worth, because I have a very different opening number, and I'm, of course, tracking 5 different books. But let's start with it. Kansas City, Philadelphia. My powering number, KC -1.5. Neutral field, I had KC 1.5 better in my numbers. Look ahead line, Westgate opened KC -1 last week, and that was bet up to -1.5. So in that same, they had look ahead lines for, it was Bills -4.5 versus Commanders, Bills -1 versus the Eagles, Chiefs -4.5 versus Commanders, Chiefs -1 versus the Eagles. Those were the look ahead lines. And they had the AFC -2.5 against the NFC for what it's worth at the Westgate last week. So it was -1 for KC at the open, bet up to 1.5. Last night, these lines opened. Kansas City opened -1.5 is the number I'm going to call it, and got bet up at many books immediately to -2. We saw the money line open KC in the -125 range. I was seeing -130s, -135s last night, right at the open. I think someone was even higher than one. There were a couple of books even higher than -135. That being said, that initial Kansas City money, and that was might have been one group or one better that bet the Chiefs at the open. That's not been a prevailing trend. The line is held pretty much at 1.5. Most of the books that moved to -2 last night have moved back down to -1.5 this morning. The majority of books. There are a handful that still are -2, but many of the books that were 1.5 last night are bet up to 2. have seen some money, some take back on Philly from a money line standpoint. And again, the WagerTalk live odds screen, such a great product. Minus 125, the prevailing number. There's minus 120 out there if you shop around, and as high as minus 136, minus 135. So there is some variance on that money line. Remember, if you like Philly, all right, this is one. We're going to see the majority of the money, or of we're going to see the majority of the money on Phillies on the money line, as opposed to +1 or +1.5, whatever it is. That's what bettors do. There were plus 115s out there earlier this morning when I was talking on WagerTalk today. And I said, I'm not convinced those plus 115s are going to last on Philly. If you like the Eagles on the, on the money line, grab the plus 115 now and look at the free WagerTalk live odds screen. Yeah, it's mostly my plus 110s. There are a couple plus 115s out there, but it's more plus 105, plus 110. So if you like Philly on the money line, find a 115 now. Again, I'm not convinced they're going to be there that much longer. The early indications are we're going to see two-way betting on this ballgame. I don't see that one side or the other is going to attract the majority of public money. I don't see one side or the other is necessarily going to attract the majority of wise guy money either. So the books are likely to get two-way action on this ballgame. They're not going to be sided here. When it comes to the total, and this is where I guess we have some differences. Look ahead total was 40. Shit, I don't even know. I have it here. 45.5 at the Westgate was a look ahead total, and obviously that was low. We saw last night this line opened. I called it 49.5/50. As the opener. There was one, again, there were a couple of BOL open low in the global books. Westgate opened low here in Vegas. But last night, what I'm calling the opener for the total, 49.5/50, because that's where the market was, about a half hour, an hour and a half after these lines were posted last night, and it was across the board. What have we seen since then? Well, the 50s got taken out. 49.5, the prevailing number right now. There are couple of 49s out there, but not a ton. But the 50s got taken out. So there was some under money coming in, taking out the 50s. And the fact that a couple of books posted look ahead lines that were a little bit low on the total, that's not the opener. Opener is 49.5/50, and the 50s have been taken out. So we've seen a little bit of under money. We saw a little bit of Chiefs money initially. That has now been bought back. And has not continued. And I would expect this line to hold in this range. KC a short favorite, total above 49, below 50 for at least the next 10, 12 days. When we start to see the last 48 hours, 72 hours before kickoff, we could see some moves, but nothing that I've seen last night or this morning makes me think that these lines are going anywhere. I think we'll see two-way action at current numbers.
I like that, Teddy. And just to be clear, I was just reading off the WagerTalk live on screen. That's what they had for the opener. So
I know. It makes me crazy. I talk to them. We'll talk about odds logic next week for sure, because that's the newest product that WagerTalk is putting together, and the live odds screen is pretty impressive. And very reasonably priced. So we'll talk about it on next week's show for sure. Odds Logic, check it out if you want between now and then.
For sure, Teddy. And I guess a question here, you've talked about this before, usually coming into week one of the NFL, they'll post those week one numbers, and you talk about movement. I remember from doing the show with you for many years now, and then there's like a dead period. And then right before kickoff, there'll be more movement. Is it kind of the same concept here with the Super Bowl? There will be movement right now, and then there'll be a dead zone, and then come into, Thursday, Friday before the kick, there'll be more movement.
Yes, that's my exact. There'll be initial flurry, and we've seen the initial flurry. Okay. It's Monday morning. I don't know how much these lines are going to move for the next 10 days. I'll take the under. I think KC is going to be short chalk. I think the total is going to be in the same range. We're not going to see any weather info affecting the total. It's just a handicap from here on out, and it's just books responding to the money that we're getting. I would anticipate, again, I've been wrong before, but I would not anticipate a ton of line movement on this game moving forward. I really wouldn't. The reason that I think there's some urgency for the Philadelphia side on the money line, if you like that side on the money line, is because we're likely to see the majority or a significant portion of the Eagles' money come on the money line. And what we see in the Super Bowl tends to distort money lines. There is a distortion in the betting marketplace where the people that bet the favorite lay the points, the people that take the dog on the money line. So oftentimes you'll see the quote unquote best value on Super Bowl Sunday is the favorite on the money line. Here's a scenario where Philly at plus 115, likely, in my opinion, to take at least some money line action. I don't think it gets higher than that, which is the urgency for Philadelphia. But other than that, I mean, there really isn't a ton of urgency to get involved today. That being said, Drew, this is one game that absolutely stood out to me. When the line came out last night, I'm like, I'm getting down on it now. I'm getting down on it large. And I did. I made a big bet last night. I advise my clients to do the same. I do have a 5% big ticket money line wager on the Super Bowl available right now at WagerTalk.com on my page, wt.buzz/TC. I don't do this a lot, but this is one that right at the opener, I'm like, let's lock in at this number. And we did that last night. We did it in the step-up size wager. We've won each of the last 3 Super Bowls, and I'm number 1 all time at Wager Talk when it comes to 5% big ticket profitability. So if you want to get on board, you can do that right now on my page, wt.buzz/T.
Teddy covers WagerTalk.com. Teddy, you bring up, public where this is going. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Taylor, the whole bit. You really don't think that they're going to take more public money? You think it might be a little bit more even?
Yes, I do.
All right.
And again, the public bets the Super Bowl. It's probably the only game all year where you have to factor in public opinion. But there's plenty of anti-Chief sentiment out there.
Okay.
There's plenty of folks that haven't made money betting on Kansas City as favorites this year that'll be looking to fade them. Philly's got a fairly significant betting bandwagon. There'll be two-way action on this game. This is not going to be all Kansas City all the time, I don't think. I've been wrong before, but nothing that I've seen early makes me think that it's going to be all Chiefs all the time.
In anything with the venue, of course, being in New Orleans, Philadelphia has played here this season, earlier this year. And another part of the venue, not only being New Orleans, but it being in a dome. Of course, both of these two teams, Philadelphia, Kansas City, kind of cold weather. Neither one of them has played in very many dome games, particularly since like the month of September. Does that change anything, that it will be a controlled climate and there isn't a lot of history of recent?
So there's a lot of factors for any game. And you can choose to focus on whatever factors you think are important. When it comes to the venue here being played on a fast track in New Orleans, I mean, does it matter? I don't see anything initially. Well, my first thought process that makes me think that the venue affects my thought on side or total for this ball game. And you read some of the quotes. Let me give you some quotes. Right here from these two teams, because the quotes are much more, they're exactly what you'd expect from veteran teams going into a game like this. Patrick Mahomes, I think I've always said it. It's not about one guy. It's not about a couple guys. It's about the whole entire team. We needed the defense to get stops. They get stops. Offense, we made plays. That's why we're so special. It's a team effort and a team football game. And that was such a game of inches. I mean, James Cook with that incredible touchdown, barely inches. The very controversial 4th down stop for Kansas City against Buffalo, inches. There's a lot of that. And this game, much like the last meeting between these two teams in the Super Bowl, may be a matter of inches. We all remember that game. 38-35 was a classic. KC did have a defensive score in that contest. That was a huge difference maker. And obviously made the plays at the end of the game. But, that was an absolute thriller. It came down to the final play of the game. It was decided by exactly a field goal. Of course, for Philadelphia, similar quotes. Teams that have been here before. Jalen Hurts, it's not about me. I don't play the game for any statistical measure. You play the game to win. I play the game to win. And, of course, the passing game worked for Philadelphia yesterday. Some of that's Washington's defense. Some of that's the fact that I thought that Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia passing game was an undervalued commodity going into that concept. That's why I like the over, or a big part of the reason why I like the over in that ball game. And it said that Sirianni, quote, let me out of my straitjacket a little bit today. And they're able to throw the football effectively. Only the second time in the last 8 games he's reached 200 passing yards. KC allowed a Bills touchdown drive in the second half when Buffalo was kind of taking over that game. And it was all runs. They didn't throw the ball once on that drive. That's a concern for Kansas City against Saquon Barkley. Barkley's doing very, very special things on a week-in, week-out basis. And with Barkley clicking and the passing game clicking, this is certainly no easy offense to stop. That being said, it is worth noting Philly won the turnover battle 4-0 against Washington. In the postseason, they played the Packers, the Rams, and the Commanders all at home. Defense, 10 takeaways. Offense, 0 giveaways. So, yes, they've been a good point spread team. When you're plus 10 in turnovers over a 3-week span, you're supposed to be a good point spread team. For Kansas City, they played the Texans and the Bills in the postseason. Houston gave them a battle. Buffalo gave them a battle. We don't have that dominant victory like Philadelphia had in the NFC Championship game, although, of course, the point spread track record for teams that score was at 40-plus in the championship games. Not great. I'm really interested in I want to look at Ralph Michaels' stats on that, angles on that. But if memory serves correctly, the team that went nuts in the championship game, not always a bet on in the Super Bowl. That being said, obviously, the last time these two teams met, it was an absolute classic. I don't think anyone would be surprised if we saw another one 13 days from today.
And Teddy, I know we got some history to go over here because there are some trends that are kind of eye-popping here in the Super Bowl, mainly on the side part, but also some totals here. Did you want to throw out some props that were catching your eye?
I do, and again, these I've got openers from DraftKings over here, and I have a little birdie said, "Hey, there's something. If you want to bet them sooner rather than later." They expect Jalen Hurts under number, so 214.5 was his opener in the passing yards at DK, and my source expected under money there. Kareem Hunt over carries, another one that stands out. He opened at 10.5 carries, and Kareem Hunt here in the postseason has been a big factor in Kansas City's offense. So that's 2 that stands out. Hurts under passing yards, Hunt over carries, 2 worth noting. And of course, when it comes to the MVP, there's a school of thought that says don't bet the team to win, just bet the MVP. So you can get Mahomes even money now at MVP. What does he have? 3 of these already? And I guess that's better than laying minus 125, minus 130 with Kansas City, unless there's no one else that can win the MVP. And really, when you look at the other choices for Kansas City, there's no one that's even close. One would expect Mahomes to win that. But I get the case. All right, bet Mahomes for MVP, and then don't even worry about the side. If you like the Kansas City side, there's something to be said for that. It's not how I would choose to make my wager if I like Kansas City. But of course, with Barkley and Hurts for Philadelphia, Barkley's plus 275 at the open. These are offshore numbers, they're global numbers. Hurts in the plus 360 range as the MVP. I mean, it's likely to be one of those 3 guys. But with Philadelphia, there's not the one guy you can pick who's likely to win it if they win. So I think the correlation is stronger for Mahomes with the Chiefs than it would be with Barkley or Hurts for Philadelphia. Position winner is an interesting one. Quarterback minus 220, running back plus 225, wide receiver plus 650 at the open. Again, global numbers. And of course, they have the stuff, Super Bowl MVP to mention first. Teammates, God, religion, city fans, coaches, family, team owner, that kind of crap. Quarterback minus 220, any other position plus 155 for Super Bowl. Super Bowl to be from MVP to be from the losing team, you can get 25-1 if you want that bet. I would not advise that. And this is so key when it comes to Super Bowls, all right? It really is when you talk about the basics of Super Bowl betting. Your general public wants to bet a little to win a lot. Oh, 25-1, let's try that. Super Bowl MVP is not coming from the losing team this year. All right. I would be shocked to see that happen. I mean, I guess it could, but it's 25-1 for a reason. Same thing with overtimes and safeties, and the general public's always looking for the scores, not to mention the parlays. How do I bet a little to win a lot? The sharp money is very comfortable betting a lot to win a little when the odds are in their favor. And that is one of the biggest differences when it comes to Super Bowl Sunday between pros and Joes. Joes are looking for scores on a day that's really hard to get scores. And pros are looking to grind out a profit just like they do on any other day.
And Teddy, a couple questions right there on the props. One is, off the top of your head, has a Super Bowl winner ever come from the losing team?
It did once that I could, and I can't remember who it was, but I know it's happened at least once.
Okay.
Let me find out for sure. Let's find out when the last time it happened.
Because I'm thinking I wouldn't want to make that bet, particularly if you're betting into something that's never happened before. That wouldn't be like a profile that I would look to go off of. And I got another question for you in terms of what the Super Bowl MVP says first. What was the religion? What was the price on that? If you have it in front of
you. Give me 1 second. 1971, the Cowboys had a defender that was the Super Bowl MVP in a game that they lost. When it comes to the teammates, minus 150, God religion plus 150, city fans 9-1, coaches 14-1. First, this is who the Super Bowl MVP would mention first. Team, God, city 1, 2, 3, coaches, family, team owner 4, 5, 6. Taylor Swift, number 7 at 33-1.
Okay, one thing I want to throw out with that is I think this number is going to move. Feel free to go against me if you want, TC. But Patrick Mahomes, if he wins it, he's a polished guy. Like if you hear him talk, I wouldn't be surprised if he's worked with a broadcast coach, a speech coach, which I applaud him for. But you can just tell whether they ask him about politics, anything, he's on point with his words. And if you watched just last night, right off the bat, he was like, first, I want to thank God. I would follow that, use that into your handicap because he's likely just going to do that again, kind of repetition in what you say. I don't know if you think there's any advantage to betting religion first off of that.
So I'm not betting globally these days. So not nearly at the level that, that's one good advantage of living in Las Vegas is that you don't have to, which, I mean, I guess limits your ability to place bets like this one, but it's a recreational wager, and that's the only way I can phrase it. Yeah, sure, action. I mean, we talk about it all the time, Super Bowl Sunday, Christmas for sports bettors, and it's fine to have a bunch of action on this game. Everybody does. Wager sizes. Okay, this is not a game that you're going to say, oh my God, every line's wrong, and these guys are idiots. They're not idiots. I have a 5% big ticket play this week because I have a really strong opinion on this game. Not because I think the line stinks. Line is fine. Line's where it should be. In general, I've seen more bankroll busting for serious bettors. You have March Madness opening weekend. You have Super Bowl Sunday. Don't blow your bankroll. It's okay to get involved, but small, fun action bets. This is not, all right, I'm betting 50 dimes on this, that, and the other. It's not that type of a day. At least not for me.
No, sure. But if you want a little coin on the coin toss, so to speak, things of that nature, it's always fun, guys.
You have a little action, of course. I'm not saying don't bet anything and I'm certainly not saying, when you're laying 110 on the coin toss, we know it's a negative expectation bet, all right? I'm not betting on the coin toss. If someone wants to bet on the coin toss, I'm not going to rip them a new a-hole for betting on the coin toss. Go have a good time, Super Bowl Sunday. But don't bet $1,000 or $5,000 on the coin toss. All right, I just won $20, or $50, $100, whatever. Keep your wager sizes reasonable. and don't blow your bankroll on Super Bowl Sunday. It can be a dangerous day for bettors. So that's the number one piece of advice I can give.
Shout out to the chat box. Everybody chiming in. Backstage tattoo in the house. We got memorabilia saying I left out Mama Kelsey when kind of teeing up the Chiefs there. But yeah, guys, feel free to throw out any questions here in the live chat, in the comments below on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got some Super Bowl history coming up. Teddy, did you want to throw out anything else before we get into the past Super Bowl games that might have an impact on the results here?
I've talked side, I've talked total, I talked some of the early props I saw. I gave you some quotes after the games. I gave you some stats after the games. We talked a little bit about the first Super Bowl matchup between these two teams. And if you want, I could talk a little bit more about that. Let me pull up that box score real quick. I looked at it pretty good last night. But, that was a game where Philly led by double digits at halftime. And KC came on pretty strong in the fourth quarter. Eagles won first downs. Eagles 11 of 18 on third downs and 2 of 2 on fourth downs in that game. Eagles outgained KC 417 to 340 yards per play. KC 6.4, Philly 5.8. And Philly had the only turnover in the game. And guess what? Eagles had more penalties than the Patrick Mahomes team, just like we've seen in every playoff game this year. The key to that game, red zone execution and football. Kansas City was able to run 6.1 yards per carry, 158 yards on the ground, compared to 3.6 for Philadelphia. And Philly had the one turnover that led to it was a pick six or a fumble six, I don't remember. And Philly had twice as many penalties as Kansas City. They did win the time of possession 35 to 25 in that contest. So again, it was a very, very close game. KC rallied from behind, and I would not be surprised at all to see another close game on Super Bowl Sunday as a matchup. Again, with these, as we go through some Super Bowl history, we can talk about how different the point spreads are in the modern era than they were back in the blowout era of Super Bowls, because it's crazy how short these spreads are. I mean, again, last year, KC plus 2.5. The year before, plus 1.5. The Rams were 4.5 against Cincinnati. Tampa was a 3-point dog against KC. KC was 1.5 against San Fran. New England was 2.5 against LA. New England was 4 against Philly. New England was 3.5 against Atlanta, or 3.5 against Atlanta. So the last time we've seen anyone plus 5, 2016 when the Broncos beat the Panthers. And Denver was a dog in that game.
Yeah, that was Cam Newton and company for the Panthers. Teddy, and going back, I mean, you go back to like the 90s, there's 13.5, 18.5, 10.5, 14, 11, all in like 5 straight years. So we have come to like new times here. Also want to throw out, when you brought up the last time Kansas City and Philadelphia played, that was also in Glendale, a dome, and that one went way over.
Sure.
That cashed the over pretty significantly.
Sure, but these are very different teams than those two teams. All right. That was a Tyreek Hill team for Kansas City a year where the defense was concerned for the Chiefs. And then last year they spent all the money on defense. And the last 2 years, the defense has been way better than it was in that time. Philadelphia, obviously this year with Barkley, it's a very different mentality for the Eagles, a very different game plan for the Eagles than what we saw in that last Super Bowl, where it wasn't about running the football. And Philadelphia is still there. Their strength is always in the trenches, and that hasn't changed. And their defense is certainly better statistically this year than it was for the previous Super Bowl run. But it's not a scenario where yes, I'm interested in looking back at the game 2 years ago, but I'm not expecting a repeat. The other thing I want to say is, you talked about in the 90s and in the 80s when we had all these blowouts. Look at the odds, all right? I'm just going to go through some games. St. Louis -7 against Tennessee. That was the first Super Bowl of the decade. St. Louis -14 against New England. That was the second match. The year with the Patriots. That was Tom Brady's first title. They were 14-point dogs. New England was a 7-point favorite against Carolina and didn't cover that Super Bowl. They were 7-point favorites against Philadelphia. Didn't cover that. Pittsburgh was -4.5 against Seattle. Again, more than a field goal. Indy was -7 against Chicago. They covered. New England was -12 against the Giants. Giants won outright. Pittsburgh was -7 against Arizona, in that Super Bowl. So this is all time when I've been in Vegas, where it was 7, the touchdown consistently. The Saints were 5-point dogs against the Colts in 2010 when Drew Brees won his title and Sean Payton. So it's really been since then, the last 15 years. And again, we saw, Denver was +5. Baltimore was +5 against San Francisco, and when they won in that Colin Kaepernick Super Bowl. And New Orleans was +5 against Indy. But that's as high as we've seen, in the last 15 years. Whereas prior to that, it was very normal, -7 and higher year in, year out. So the nature of the NFL has changed. These games are tighter now, and the elite teams aren't as elite, or we're not seeing big underdogs. And of course, Philly, the number 2 seed, KC, the number 1 seed. Both these teams have been quality squads all year and have been near the top of everyone's power ratings all year, or certainly since, the back half of the campaign. And even though KC struggled to cover some point spreads, it wasn't like you were downgrading them significantly. So this isn't an upstart coming out of nowhere that's come into play to create a bigger point spread, like an Arizona or a Carolina or a Denver team with a half-dead Peyton Manning. So we're not seeing the bigger point spreads.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up number 1 and number 2 seeds. Also, 34-5, I believe, is the record combined. I mean, both of these two teams with 17 wins on the season. So just not a lot of losing from either of these two teams coming into the tight point spread. And Teddy, do want to bring up more recently in Super Bowl history. First off, the underdog is 4-0 ATS the last 4 years, guys. 3 of them outright cashes. Now, granted, it's not, big point spreads, but hey, the underdog has been money here, TC. Did you want to go over, more recently or more in the future? Did you want to go one by one? How do you want to do this?
I don't know. So I feel like we can spend hours. I have so many, one of the things that I have is a lot of Super Bowl, experience and memories. Because living in Las Vegas for 27 years, you get those. And I thought it might be fun to go through some of these games and just go, I remember that. I remember this. This is who I bet. But I want to do a quick hitter. And I don't know if you have time, we can do it. We can start with my first Super Bowl out here. I can just rattle shit off. I was right on that one.
1999
against Atlanta. Yeah. That's one on the. So that's my first Super Bowl out here. I don't even think I hadn't even whocovers.com hadn't even been. I registered the URL, but I was making my reputation posting on internet forums about and I wasn't even on radio yet or anything. And I had a buddy come into town for the Super Bowl. We stayed up all night, and at like 7 a.m, we're like, okay, we got to bet this. We got to get bet. We're tracking over to Imperial Palace, and I was worried about finding a seat. We slept until kickoff. I got up. I was like, "Oh crap, we got to go!" And that ended up being really easy. I had Denver minus the points in that game. Really enjoyed it. Even with there was a kick return touchdown. Who was that? Tim Dwight, I think it was for Atlanta. That was my first Super Bowl in town. The next year was the push. That's the longest line I've ever seen. I watched that game at Mandalay Bay, and after the game, it was a push. Didn't matter which side you had. Everyone, there was some 7.5. There was some 6.5. That was the game where McNair's pass came a yard short. But every single person who made a bet had to get a refund at the -7. The line after the game was as long as I've ever seen any sportsbook line in my life, and that includes the Westgate on prop night. It was chaos after that Super Bowl. Really exciting game. Baltimore against the Giants, I had that one right. I had the Ravens minus the points. The Giants were took all the money on game day. Baltimore was -3 at the open. That game closed pick 'em. The Giants fans were coming in like it was done. What was that? Kerry Collins. I like that one. That was nice and easy. The Patriots beating the Rams was one where I learned a lesson. That was the last time that I'm like, Vegas wants, Vegas thinks, Vegas wants, Vegas thinks. And that's where I kind of learned that, I'm like, this line can't be 14. Vegas clearly wants you to take New England. So I took St. Louis. That wasn't a fun Super Bowl. I watched that one at MGM. I hung out with Charles Barkley before that Super Bowl. Barkley I was with a buddy who was a big player. I'm friends with Bobby Flay and his management group at his restaurants. This is one of my buddies who went to Michigan with me. He was in that group. He was in the high roller room at the MGM, and Barkley was in there as well. And that was the day where the sportsbook director for Mandalay took that big bet from Barkley and then didn't get it signed or whatever because he was over at the MGM, and then got fired afterwards as a result because he took New England on the money line. That was a fun and interesting Super Bowl Sunday, even though I had the wrong side in that one. Oh, this was one of my favorites, Tampa blowing out Oakland. I watched that at a bar with all the guys from the Tuesday group, and I had Tampa large. We all had Tampa, and that was fun. And it was over early, and there was no sweat, and I got drunk that day. I don't drink a lot, Drew. You know, I was I was at the bar. My wife drove me home from that Super Bowl. Right side there. New England, the next two, New England, Carolina, New England, Philly. I remember them both being really hard for me. Were unlike this Super Bowl. This Super Bowl, I knew, again, line came out. I'm like, bang, let's go. And I posted it last night, and I'm ready to load up on it. I made my bet and got it down for the clients. Boom, boom. It doesn't always work that way. And those were back-to-back years where I'm like, New England's too high, but I don't want to step in front of New England. New England's too high, but I don't want to step in front of New England. I end up with totals. And I actually got them both right. I got the over in the first one, New England, Carolina. And that game was nothing into the second quarter, and then went nuts in the second quarter. And then when the third quarter was scoreless again, and the fourth quarter went nuts. And then the following year against the Philly, the Eagles, I had under in that, and that was a sweat and a half, but it got there. That was the Donovan McNabb puking game. Pittsburgh, Seattle. All my wise guy friends were like, Seattle. Pittsburgh's the number. They were the 6th seed at the time. They're like, Seattle. I'm like, no, it might be the 6th seed, but they're freaking hot right now. And don't worry about seeding so much. There's a reason that the team that with the 6th seed is the favorite in the Super Bowl. I had Pittsburgh there and went against all my buddies, and I enjoyed that game regardless. And they were all complaining about the bad calls, which there were a few of in that contest. Indy, Chicago. Oh, this one was awful for me, Drew. Awful. Here's a story for you. All right. I'm in a contest at an offshore book, and if I win, I win 50 dimes. If I lose, I win 20 dimes. I'm playing for first or second place. Big contest. Excited about the score. Contest strategy says I'm supposed to be on the dog because the other guy was in the favorite, or I forget how it worked out. I ended up on Chicago in the game. Chicago was wrong. I hedged at halftime. And then the book that I was supposed to get the 20 dimes from went out of business the next day. So I lost my bet, I lost my hedge bet, and I never got paid. Yeah. I could swear here for a moment, but I won't. Lenny from Cascade.
Oh, man.
You remember that guy. I remember that guy. Anyhow, it was a disaster for me. I lost the contest. Neither me nor the winner got paid. And I lost every bet that I made. And it was a really, really shitty Super Bowl. And I watched it at home by myself. It was quiet because I'm like, I got to be able to think and hedge at halftime. It's the big deal. And, well, it didn't work out for me. Not at all. Giants, Patriots, the first one. That was the year where New England was that was a monster and won every game until the Giants beat them. I did not have G-Man. That was another one. The books lost that game. All right. The books don't lose a lot of Super Bowls, and they lost that game. I lost with them. Pittsburgh, Arizona. That was a fun one. I love that game. Should I keep going here, Drew? I can go on and on. I feel like I'm But Pittsburgh, Arizona. I watched that at Brian Leonard's house with a whole bunch of Tuesday group guys were there, and I was at a party beforehand and got there late. One of the Astros. Back in those days, the Astros would throw these crazy parties in Vegas. Crazy parties. The parties, like, oh, I would love to get invited to that party. I went to a couple of them. But then I went and watched the game with my buddies. I had Arizona plus the points, and that 99, 101-yard pick six, whatever it was, right before halftime. I don't think I've ever been more confident in the Super Bowl than I was with Arizona that year. I'm like, Kurt Warner's bringing them back. It'll be fine. And Plaxico caught the touchdown to win the game. Arizona got the money. Larry Fitzgerald came in large for me in the second half of that contest. And that was a real fun Super Bowl. And again, you like to be right in. I don't know why I was so confident in Arizona that year. They're covering. The Drew Brees game against Peyton Manning, that wasn't a good game for me. I didn't enjoy that. A couple of Green Bay against Pittsburgh. That was a good one. That was the one that I did the movie for. Which I was on camera the whole time, and we won. So I ended up looking smart, but that was a sweat and a half for Chard Mendenhall fumble. The key in that ball game. How do you remember this shit? I don't know how I remember this shit. What else we got? Green Bay. Then the Giants beating the Patriots again. Baltimore, San Fran, the Colin Kaepernick Super Bowl, where I live bet San Fran, and before that last drive, and Kaepernick got him down to the 4-yard line, and then didn't get him in for the win. That was frustrating. Seattle, Denver was one that I loved. That was easy. I had Seattle plus, and that was the first play of the game was a safety. I'm like, this game's over. I was late getting to where I was going. I'm like, I walked in. I'm like, this game's over. Just don't even sweat it. And it was. I drank that day too. We won a bottle of tequila. I can't drink tequila, dude. I was puking. Anyhow, where was I? Drew, you can feel free to jump in anytime here. New England pick 'em against Seattle. I was on camera for that one too, down at the Westgate. And to this day, I don't blame the play call. All right, I don't blame when Russell Wilson let that pass go. He thought it was a touchdown. So did I. That was Bill Belichick making an incredible coach. He coached him to slide in on that play. I read like 5 articles afterwards. I don't blame the play call. That game sucked. I made a big bet on Seattle right before as they started that drive on the money line at the Westgate. And that was one that was on camera too. That one sucked. I didn't enjoy that. Denver against Carolina. I don't know why I was always against Manning in the Super Bowls. It was pretty stupid. I was wrong on that. That Super Bowl really pissed me off because I wasn't close to. I felt like I should have known better, and I don't like to. My handicaps. I don't like being wrong, especially on big games. And I couldn't have been more wrong. It was a bad handicap. I've bitched enough about 28-3 next year's Patriots Falcons. That being said, I've never been. I talked about how confident I was in New England, about in Arizona. When it was 28-3, I felt pretty good. When it was 28-9, I felt pretty good. And then Atlanta was in field goal range. But we're not going to go over that ever again. I kept getting the Brady ones wrong. I was so glad when Brady retired. I got Brady wrong with Philly. I got Brady wrong against the Rams. I got Brady wrong against Tampa. That being said, the last 3 have been real good. We had Cincy plus the points. We had KC and in each of the last 2 years. And they've been tight. All 3 of the last 3 Super Bowls have all been decided by exactly 3 points. But they've all been good for me. They've all been good for my clients. So I can go back in the 90s, Drew. I got a lot of Super Bowl memories. I'm amazed at how much stuff this noggin remembers from a long time ago. Ask me what I had for breakfast this morning. Nothing. I can't remember.
No, I like the recap there, Teddy. I mean, just a couple tidbits here. You started near the start, 2003. It was Tampa Bay, Oakland, and you said you got drunk that game. So did Oakland's center, if you remember.
Yeah.
He was it?
Yes,
they couldn't find him or
he
something.
Went to Tijuana. Of course,
Yeah.
He went to Tijuana and disappeared, and the Raiders were in trouble before that, but that certainly didn't help things.
No, not at all. Trying to think of another. I had a couple things I wanted to throw out there. Okay, New Orleans, Indianapolis, and Miami 2010. I was at that game, Teddy. It sounded like you had a kind of a wild story with that one. My cousin was dating a girl who was a dancer from the halftime show, and they needed guys to hold the lights. So we actually took a bus down there as part of the group and went and I held up the lights at halftime. And then we were walking out to the bus. And we acted like we were going to the bathroom and just left the group. So I actually got to watch the second half of the Super Bowl for free. The problem is I didn't have a ride home. So that was a long night in Miami Gardens. 2009, Pittsburgh, Arizona, my appendix ruptured the next day. That was a terrible Super Bowl for me. That was the worst. I had the worst Super Bowl out of anybody watching that one. One of the worst days of my life. Yeah. It was When your stomach's hurting for like 3 straight days and your friends are telling you to just drink through it, don't listen to them.
Sure.
That is my advice.
Drink. Yeah.
No, don't do that. 2016 Denver, Carolina. You said you were, I think, on the wrong side of that one. But you could understand why. I was with you. That was Cam Newton's Super Bowl or MVP season, and they were rolling. But you could just tell he got hit a couple times in the beginning of the game, and he had that towel over his head. That's not the Cam Newton you want to be betting on. So I was with you on that one as well.
It was one where I was unhappy with my handicap of the game. The majority of these games I've been happy. Well, win or lose, I've been happy with my handicap. A handful of them. Looking at post game, I wasn't happy at all. That one, I'm like, you just got that wrong. You just flat out got that wrong, and I don't like to get Super Bowls wrong. Nobody likes. I don't like to get anything wrong, but I particularly don't like to get Super Bowls wrong. You're not going to win all of them. Try to, but realistically, you're not going to win all of them. But I don't like being on wrong. And there were a handful of those. The one. The Patriots Rams, where I still thought, Vegas is trying to tell us something, and that was that's where I learned that lesson, and I learned it hard and fast. Vegas didn't try to tell you something. That's what the point spread is, and if you want the right side, take it.
For sure, especially in this game, they're looking for two-way action because they're going to get so much of it anyway. They're not winning you. Yeah. Well, Teddy, man, great recap. Great show overall. I know we're running up against it time-wise, but did you want to throw out anything else before we shut this down?
So a couple things worth noting. Let's promote for a minute. I do have a 5% big ticket up and available right now for Super Bowl Sunday. You can get it at my page, wt.buzz/TC. Don't buy the play. Actually, no, the 7-day all access won't go through to Super Bowl Sunday. So you can buy the play. But we also got this great deal on 7-day all access right now. 7-day all access for $77. You get every play every day and every sport for the next 7 days. Again, no promo code needed. The NBA is finally going, Drew. 80% week last week. The NFL playoffs have been real good. 80% here in the postseason. So my college hoops stinks. I'm not putting out college hoops, a whole lot of it right now. But the NBA and the NFL are both in good current form. Visit my page, wt.buzz/TC to get on board. And boy, when it comes to the likes, the comments, you guys are so good. Thank you. We appreciate them each and every week. Like, comment, and subscribe to the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Please.
Absolutely, guys. And any Super Bowl questions, fire away in the comments below because we'll be back on next Monday going over, yes, the side and total again, but mostly the props. So fire away any questions in the comments below, guys. Teddy and myself will be in there throughout the week, chiming it up with you guys. I have a 5% max limit going tonight. So if you're looking for college basketball action off the 4-0 sweep of the weekend, 5% are up tonight. And check out Teddy Covers, 5%. Big ticket in the Super Bowl. Sounds like a good one there, TC. I think I might join you on it. So, hey, man, great show overall.
Sure. It's always, look, I love doing this show. I love doing it with you, and I appreciate that. Every time I go through the comments each week, and thanks, Teddy, thanks, Drew, great show. It just makes me smile. So thank you, guys. I appreciate your positive response in a world with so much negativity. I appreciate the positivity on the opening line report, and we'll do it again next week. Throw those questions in. Drew and I will answer as many questions as we can next week. We'll go through all the props. We'll talk about where the money's flowing, what we expect to see before kickoff, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll answer every question that I can. So put them in the comments, tweet them at us at Teddy_covers, at Drew Martin Bets, and we'll answer those on next week's shows. Bet with your head, not over it. Come on, guys, don't be stupid. But enjoy the game and good luck. And thanks for watching WagerTalk TV.
For Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. That's going to do it, guys. We'll be back next week. Come back and join us. Comment below. Smash that like button. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.